Coming up next on The Beat Goes On, we welcome Matthew Gilligan from accountancy firm Gilligan Rowe. Don't be out of pocket with poor advice, whether it be estate planning, family trusts or property investments. Matthew has answers that could save you heartache and precious family assets. Matthew Gilligan, good to see you on The Beat Goes On again.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, the last time you were on we talked about gifting.
Yeah, quite a few people were concerned because, as viewers will recall, you can now gift after the 1st of October, but the issue is that should you gift, because although the gift duty legislation has been repealed, you can lose eligibility for rest home fees if you simply make a lump sum gift. Yeah. And I was just warning viewers, don't necessarily jump into gifting. I think you should take some advice and do the maths on the gifts.
Come and see, and if you do want to see that talk, viewers throughout New Zealand, it's Matthew Gilligan on The Beat Goes On if you want to go to YouTube. But we are going to talk about something different today, but the rugby. Where were you the wonderful night when...
I was in the far north in a little town called Whangaroa, and I'm not sure whether I can say I loved it or hated it. It was such a nail bite. I was sitting on the edge of my seat. Yeah.
Wasn't it awful? Do we have to win that hard?
The dastardly French. I learned long ago, never bet against them. They always surprise you.
Now, for our viewers, let's catch up a little bit, Matthew.
Yes.
Gilligan Rowe, you have an accountancy practice.
Yes,
is that correct?
So Gilligan Rowe are chartered accountants, but we're unusual because we specialise in tax and commercial structures. So we do a lot of trust work, estate planning and tax. And what we find is that if you get lawyers and accountants together and get them to look at things from both sides of the fence, you get a much better outcome.
That's the big difference, isn't it?
Yeah, we're not a law firm, but we do have lawyers on staff because we do so much commercial structuring.
Now, Matthew, you're here for us baby boomers to give us investing advice and all sorts of advice. So what's one of your other concerns for baby boomers?
Well, tonight I wanted to talk about trusts and estate planning. The reason why it's so topical, of course, is with gifting being repealed, a lot of people are considering setting up trusts. And a lot of New Zealand have formed trusts in the last 10 years, have become in vogue. And I do think that trusts are getting a very hard time in the press, and it's not fair. A trust is a very effective asset protection vehicle, especially for your children. So, you know, a lot of people in their lifetime would take tax benefits, asset protection benefits, matrimonial property benefits, but all of that stuff you can pass it along to your kids. So for example, if you set up a family trust and make your children's trusts the beneficiaries and pass the money from the parents' trust down to the children's trust after death, then the children's spouses can't claim that as matrimonial property. And so what you're doing is you're protecting your inheritance as it falls into the hands of your children. If the money goes to your children, that can become matrimonial property. If it goes to a trust for your child, then the children and their spouses can have the benefit, but it can't become matrimonial property. But you know, great care needs to be made and taken in setting these structures up, because if, for example, you take matrimonial property and put it into a trust, then that can trace through. So you really need to do a matrimonial property agreement and get your lawyers involved in that. But once it's in the trust, normally mum and dad set up a trust, transfer the property into the trust, the assets live in the trust for 10, 20, 30 years. Often that will defeat rest home fees, so you get free rest home fees. After death, the money passes down, and instead of going to the children, it goes to a trust for the children. If the children are bankrupt at the time that the inheritance is received, if it goes to them personally, the creditors get it. If it goes to a trust for them, then the creditors don't touch the money, it's preserved in trusts. That's a real benefit. I remember one of my clients bought a farm, and they bought it off the official assignee. They paid $1 million for it. Now, the reason why the official assignee got it was the owner of the farm was bankrupt at the time his father died, and so the money came to them while they were bankrupt, and the creditors got the farm. All their father had to do was to change his will so it went to a trust, and that person would have got the money in a trust for them. So there are all sorts of advantages, but one of them is creditor protection. Another is matrimonial property protection. Another is you can shelter, this is in respect to trust, another is you can shelter the assets from rest home fees in some circumstances. And it's not necessarily so that you can do it as of right, you need to take great care and get advice as you're doing it.
You have to think ahead, don't you?
You do.
Really, I mean, you just can't, doing nothing, it's going to cost you, isn't it?
There are three things you should think about. Asset protection, make sure that things are protected from creditors and matrimonial property issues in some circumstances. Secondly, estate planning. And the third part is tax. Make sure it's tax efficient. Back on estate planning, one of the things that I saw another client of mine have a problem with was well, she came to me, she was a delightful woman, but she said, how should I plan my estate? Because she had 10 children, and a couple of the children were from 2 partners ago. Mm-hmm. A couple of children were from 2 partners ago, other partner that she'd kept because that partner had died. A couple of children were from 1 partner ago. A couple of children were from this partner. And there was even a child in the house that was a ward of the state because she was a bit of a social worker.
Gosh.
So that's what we call a blended family. So if you have one trust, can you imagine your current partner in such circumstances looking after the interest of children to other spouses that partner's never known? And I think there's a bloodline tendency. You naturally can look after your own blood. So it can be appropriate to have 2 trusts or multiple trusts to protect the interests of different children from different bloodlines to get surety after death. I'll tell you one interesting case I had was a client who came to me, and she was a beneficiary of a trust, and her father had sent her a letter, terrible letter, said, dear daughter, I wish to give you notice that I have removed you from my will and as a beneficiary from my trust. I'm now 70-something years old, and I wish to inform you that you haven't been a great daughter to me in recent years, and I have a new partner, my caregiver, who turned out to be a 29-year-old with 4 children who was his caregiver when he got cancer. And, you know, the kids were good to him, but his mind just turned.
Yes. And
he turned against his 4 children, wrote to all of them and disinherited them. Now, I don't have an issue with a man that wants to disinherit his children. That's his legal and personal business. But half the money in this trust, and there was a significant amount of money involved, half of the money was, of course, his deceased spouses. So her mother, of course, left the money in good faith in one trust, and it was the intention was being perverted, and he got the opportunity to do that because he was last to live. So,
and the mother's intention was never that.
Oh, she'll turn on her grave. And fair enough if he wants to give half of the money to his new partner, but I don't think it's right, moral in any respect, proper, that he took his deceased spouse's money and perverted her intention. So if somebody wants surety after death, what they can do is create 2 trusts, put half of their wealth in one trust, half in the other, hold the assets jointly, leave instructions that surviving spouse can use the assets till their death, and then pass it through to the intended beneficiaries. And that gets rid of blended family issues, because you can say my children and my trust get it after my spouse passes on. You can put life insurance policies in separate trusts to equalise things up. If there's not enough money to go around, get a bit of life insurance, put them in a trust to bolster one side if there's not enough there.
Well, the way things are in New Zealand, Matthew, blended families are...
It's normal.
It's just so normal now.
It's normal. More than 40% of the population get divorced. So if you look at a family of 2 children, there's a very good chance that one of them's going to get divorced. You give the money to them, their partner will take half of that money in a matrimonial separation. So trusts are an easy way to deal with that. They're getting a bad rap in the papers at the moment, and I don't think it's right. They're very effective estate planning vehicles. They have good asset protection advantages. Tax-wise, not so many benefits these days, but still can have some advantages to some people. Hey, Gerard, another thing to watch for is we don't like clients putting their lawyers in after death as the executor or appointer of the trust. The appointer is the person who runs the trust by virtue of being able to appoint and remove trustees.
Not good to put a lawyer there, is it?
No, because then your children are cap in hand to that lawyer. I think you're better to empower the children who can then choose to work with the lawyer. When you put a lawyer in as the executor of the estate or the appointer of the trust, I call that a gravy train. And we don't like gravy training in the client base. Empower the children, give them control after death. They can choose to work with the lawyer. If the lawyer works and does things in a timely fashion and charges a fair fee, they get the job. Your children can then fire them if it's not working.
Look, this is great information, Matthew.
Great. It's good commercial, sensible stuff, isn't it?
How can people get hold of you, Matthew, to have a chat with you?
Look, if they call us in Auckland, 09 522 7955.
7955.
And of course our website's full of useful information.
www.GRA. It's pretty simple, isn't it? .co.nz.
That's right.
Wonderful.
And if somebody would like to email me directly, mg
at
gra.co.nz.
Well, Matthew, you're coming back, so we'll hear some more fascinating stories about not what to do.
Thanks for having me.
And what to do. Thanks, Matthew.